Discover the incredible journey of baby puppy Ginger. 7 heartwarming moments of love and transformation that will change a town forever. In the heart of a small Midwestern town, a fierce winter storm swirled, lashing against the streets with icy fingers. Ginger, a sprightly golden retriever puppy barely a year old, bounced happily beside her family, ready for a holiday walk. But just as snowflakes began to dance downward, swirling like confetti in the air, the storm intensified. A sudden gust of wind swept through, and in a blink, she was lost, separated from the laughter and warmth of her loved ones. Panic surged through Ginger as she zigzagged through snow-slicked alleys, her tiny heart pounding with fear. She wanted nothing more than to find her way home. Shivering in the cold, she stumbled across a cardboard box outside a quaint bakery adorned with festive lights. The sweet scent of cinnamon and sugar could be detected amidst the snowy chill, enticing her to nuzzle closer. Inside, Sarah, the bakery owner, felt the weight of her father's recent passing. The beloved veteran's absence left a void too heavy to bear, with dreams of keeping the family business alive growing dimmer. She opened the door and saw Ginger's big brown eyes gazing up at her, a flicker of hope in a bleak winter. "Come in, little one," Sarah whispered, scooping the trembling pup into her arms. Immediately, warmth spread through both their hearts. It was like lighting a candle in a dark room. Ginger ne sombre existence. As she wrapped the puppy in a soft towel, she felt a pulse of life return. For the first time in months, she smiled. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Days turned into weeks, and as Ginger cozied into her new home at the bakery, the townsfolk began to notice. They watched as Sarah transformed, pouring her love into the dough she kneaded and the pastries she crafted. The bakery that once felt dull now thrived with laughter, warmth, and the irresistible aroma of fresh goods. Neighbors gathered, sharing stories and smiles over coffee and cookies. But just when they started to feel joy again, another brutal storm hit, pelting the town with heavy snow, threatening the bakery and everything Sarah had rebuilt. Amidst the chaos, whispers of despair lingered in the cold air. The community had forgotten what it meant to support one another, every flicker of kindness snuffed out by hardship. But as the storm raged, Ginger sensed the fear that tightened their hearts. With a sudden burst of courage, she leaped from the warmth of the bakery to rescue a child trapped under a thick blanket of snow. In that moment, everything changed. Hearts began to thaw. Could the spirit of Sarah's father guide this town back to unity and love? Ginger's boundless energy whispered possibilities, echoing through the hearts of everyone who had nearly lost hope. The storm howled like a beast outside, drowning out every other sound. Inside the bakery, Sarah tried her best to keep everyone's spirits high, handing out warm treats and sharing stories that felt lighter than the snow piling up outside. But even as laughter filled the room, worry loomed like the dark clouds overhead. Each gust of wind against the windows reminded them of what they had lost and what they still stood to lose. Ginger, now a symbol of hope, wandered through the bakery, hot chocolate-scented steam rising around her. The puppy had discovered her purpose in this strange place, a mission to bring warmth and love to those who felt the coldest. She nuzzled eager hands, her fluffy, golden for a soothing reminder of joy amidst chaos. But a soft whimper escaped her as she sensed that the storm was more than just weather. It was a reflection of the community's struggles, their hearts heavy with sorrow. The townsfolk watched as she darted to the window, ears perked and tail wagging at the sight of the children huddled together outside. She wants to go out again. A little girl exclaimed. Sarah's heart sank. The storm was relentless, and sending Ginger out felt too risky. But the puppy's determination was infectious, igniting a spark in the girl's eyes. You know, maybe we could help others too, the child suggested. That thought shook Sarah from her resolve. Could they do something together, as a town? Inspired by Ginger's courage, a plan began to form. Let's make care packages for everyone, Sarah said, her voice steadying. The townsfolk rallied, drawing strength from each other. They wrapped blankets, baked extra loaves of bread, and packed jars of soup, the warmth of their hearts overflowing. As the storm raged on, Ginger playfully bounded about, filling the bakery with energy while everyone worked. It wasn't long before they had assembled a mountain of care packages, ready to be delivered to those who needed them most. Despite the biting cold outside, a newfound warmth bubbled within the walls. When it finally came time for Ginger to lead the way, a community formed behind her. Families stepped out into the harsh winter night, braving the snow together, carrying the packages with stern determination. Ginger dashed ahead, barking her delight, leading the way like a true hero. With each knock on a door, they found gratitude and tears of joy. The town was alive again. They shared stories and laughter, reigniting their sense of community. All sparked by a little puppy who had wandered into their lives. But just when they thought they had turned a corner, a chilling realization struck Sarah as she looked at the horizon. The storm's bite was fading, but beneath the surface, something else loomed. The other side of this storm promised both challenges and changes that no one was prepared for. New dynamics. Old wounds, reopening, and the question of survival that still hung over them. Ginger felt the shift in the air, the kind that made her heart race. What lay ahead threatened to test their newly rekindled bond. The puppy paused, turning back to look at Sarah, her big brown eyes full of questions. What other trials awaited them, and would their community stand strong when challenges arose again? As the snow continued to fall, the flicker of uncertainty loomed large, pushing them all toward a moment of truth. The air was crisp as dawn broke, a silvery light filtering through the heavy clouds. The bakery, once buzzing with laughter and purpose, now held a weighty hush. Ginger nestled close to Sarah, her warmth a small comfort against the chill that lingered despite the storm's passing. It felt like the calm before a new storm, one that brewed deeper within the town itself. As families returned home, smiles still lingering from their night of giving, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The cheerful laughter and gratitude from the care package deliveries were now tinged with the unspoken questions that loomed over their heads. Would the community's rekindled spirit withstand the new challenges ahead? Okay, Ginger, Sarah murmured. Today is a new day. The puppy wagged her tail, as if sensing the resolution in Sarah's tone. Her floppy ears perked with excitement, ready to face whatever came next. The gathering crowd began to settle in the bakery once again, weary but determined. As Sarah prepared coffee and pastries, she noticed the subtle shift in their conversations. Whispers of worry seeped through the air. The looming concerns about the town's future felt heavy. "Should we be preparing for more storms?" asked one man, his voice barely above a murmur, but carrying the weight of the fear shared by all. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the small crowd. Another woman chimed in. "We need to think of how to rebuild, not just recover," her brow furrowed, reflecting the anxiety that clawed at their hearts. It wasn't only the weather they feared. It was the fragility of their new bond, exposed to potential fractures in the wake of recovery. Ginger, unaware of the gravity of their concerns, playfully tugged on a child's scarf, bringing a momentary smile amidst the tension, but even the laughter felt forced. Deep down, everyone knew that storms could return not only in the skies, but in the dynamics of their community. They sat together in a circle, the bakery's warmth contrasting with the biting air outside. Sarah felt a surge of emotion as she looked around, faces worn by troubles but still hopeful. Each person had their own story, marking them in ways that couldn't be erased. "We need to share more than just bread and blankets," Sarah said, a spark of determination igniting within her. "Let's start a community meeting. We need to talk about what's next." The crowd nodded, realization dawning on them. Gathering their voices could solidify their bond. They were all in different battles, yet intertwined through a shared fight. As the conversations began to flow more easily, Ginger snuggled up close to a little boy, who giggled and petted her soft fur. It was a reminder that love could flourish even during uncertainty. But as the meeting unfolded, Sarah caught a muffled voice drift through the door, the sound of distant shouting. Pushing through the crowd, she opened the door to see a few townsfolk rushing past in panic. A figure stood at the edge of the square, waving frantically, their breath visible in the cold air. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked, panic striking her heart. "There's something happening at the old mill," a man exclaimed, urgency etched on every feature. Ginger's ears perked again, sensing the shift in atmosphere. The puppy looked at Sarah, her big eyes wide, reflecting the worry that filled the room. What was happening that could shake their fragile peace? As Sarah turned to face her community, she felt the stirring of dread mixed with determination. They had just begun to heal, but would they be strong enough to confront whatever this was? The breath of winter clung heavily to the air as Sarah stepped outside, the cold biting at her cheeks. She pushed through the crowd gathering at the door, her heart racing. Panic laced with urgency swirled around her like the gusts of wind that swept through the square. At the edge of the town square, the old mill loomed, a relic from years past. Its weathered, wooden beams creaked ominously in the breeze. The figure, waving frantically, was none other than Mike, a sturdy man known for his calm demeanor. His usually steady eyes were wide, filled with fear. "Mike, what's going on?" Sarah shouted, her voice barely rising above the murmurs of the crowd that were now gathering closer. It's a fire." His voice cracked, the words tumbling out like ash in the wind. "I saw flames bursting from the side. I think it's spreading." Gasps erupted from the group standing nearby. The warmth of the bakery was quickly replaced by a chill of dread. Fire at the old mill. It was unthinkable. That place had stood for generations, a symbol of their community's strength. "I'll get the fire extinguishers," someone shouted, scrambling away towards their homes. The others quickly began to disperse, grabbing blankets, buckets, anything they could find while the flames. "Sir, we need dough." Ginger barked, sensing the panic in her owner's heart. The little puppy nuzzled against her leg, as if trying to ground her in the chaos. Together, Sarah and Mike sprinted toward the mill. The closer they got, the stronger the acrid smell of smoke filled their lungs. Flames flickered through the gaps in the wood, a furious dance of orange and red. This was a real fire, one that could consume everything in its path. "We can't let it spread to the stores," Sarah exclaimed, her mind racing. They had just begun to rebuild their community after the storm, and now this. As they reached the mill, Sarah spotted a group of townsfolk pulling buckets from the nearby creek. "Forming a makeshift line to transport water, we all have to stand together," she called out, her voice breaking through the fray. Ginger barked excitedly, darting between legs, rallying everyone. In the face of disaster, the little puppy became a beacon. Laughter erupted amidst the tension as she soaked her paws, while playfully dodging everyone, reminding them that they were still united as they faced this looming threat. "Come on, we can do this," Sarah cheered, the heat of the flames behind her fueling her spirit. With every bucket of water tossed at the blaze, they moved as one, a collective force against the chaos threatening their home. The battle against the fire started to feel like a reflection of their struggles. This community had been tested before, but the flames could either strengthen them or tear them apart. They couldn't let it win, not now. As the smoke billowed, Sarah's heart raced with a mixture of fear and fierce determination. They were more than a town. They were family, and family fights for each other. But as the flames began to retreat, a sudden crack echoed from above, causing a collective gasp. A beam was falling. Would they make it out in time? Could the bonds they forged prevail once more in the face of disaster? The town's survival depended on each of them standing strong. What was lurking in the shadows as they battled the flames? And would they come out of this stronger than before? The crack of the beam echoed like thunder, snapping Sarah from her resolve. Time slowed as she glanced up, heart pounding. It felt like the world around them had paused. Just for a second. "Get back!" Mike shouted, pushing her away, shielding her from the impending danger. Adrenaline surged through Sarah's veins as she yelled, "Everyone, watch out!" The crowd scrambled back, all eyes on the wooden structure swaying dangerously above them. She held her breath, dread coiling in her stomach. Each second felt like an eternity. In an instant, the beam plummeted, crashing down with a deafening crash, sending shards of wood flying in every direction. A few people cried out, scrambling to avoid the debris. Sarah gasped, but the fear quickly turned to relief as she realized no one had been hit. "Are you hurt?" she managed to ask Mike, her voice trembling. "No, I'm fine. Just let's keep moving." With renewed urgency, he turned back toward the fire. The flames roared, an ominous growl threatening to reclaim everything they held dear. Ginger barked, picking up on the tension. The little puppy darted around, her energy contagious. "We need to focus. It's fire when it's on," Sarah called, her heart racing with determination. A line of buckets formed on the edge of the creek, and Sarah made her way back, grabbing her own bucket, her hands steady now with resolve. She could feel the heat from the flames on her skin, the sweat-forming beads on her forehead. More water. Keep it coming, she shouted as they worked faster, passing buckets hand to hand. Each splash against the fierce fire felt like a small victory, each drop a flicker of hope against despair. The crowd's voices blended into a symphony of purpose, echoing her own quiet mantra, "We can do this." Then, amid the chaos, a familiar face appeared. It was Mrs. Anderson, the elderly woman who ran the town bookstore, her face lined with concern. "Sarah, I have some fire extinguishers at my house. We're going to need them." "Go, bring them back," Sarah shouted, feeling a sense of pride swell in her chest as more townsfolk rallied behind Mrs. Anderson, hopeful glances exchanged among them. But just as a wave of relief washed over her, an ominous crackling noise broke through. The fire surged higher, embers dancing like fireflies in the night. "Stay together," Mike shouted, moving into position with the others. Suddenly, another beam, weakened by the flames, splintered. This time, it fell horizontally, a deadly arch heading straight toward the crowd. A split-second decision ignited in Sarah's mind. "Ginger, come here," she cried, scooping up the little puppy and sprinting toward the edge of the square. She felt the heat at her back, a pulse of danger, but she couldn't think of her safety now. Not yet. Time blurred, and the world around her faded in and out of focus as Sarah glanced back, watching Mike and the others pull people away. Together, they formed a human shield. The sight filled her with an intense hope and dread. Would they stay safe? Through the smoke, she spotted movement, a child, frozen in fear just a few yards away from the falling beam. Without thinking, Sarah charged forward, clutching Ginger tightly to her chest. "Come on." "This way," she yelled to the child, heart racing. As she reached the little boy, she grabbed his hand. With one swift motion, they darted to safety, the beam crashing behind them just as they escaped. She could hear the cries of relief around her, people clinging to each other, a palpable sense of unity birthed from the chaos. A moment of silence followed, but it was short-lived. The fire still raged, the battle still fought. "That was too close," the boy whispered, eyes wide with fear. But in that moment of shared fear, Sarah realized something powerful. They were one community, and together they would stand against anything. As they readied for the next wave, she couldn't shake a gnawing feeling in her gut. This fire was just the beginning. What else would it take to test their bonds? Would they withstand the dark forces lurking within their own town? The heat from the fire intensified as Sarah caught her breath. She could still hear the crackling behind her. The flames licking at the wooden beams that held their beloved town square together. It felt like a living beast, feral and untamed, trying to swallow everything in its path. "Focus. We need to regroup," Mike called, his voice cutting through the chaos. He was directing the small army of neighbors and friends, their faces lit by the fiery glow. Each of them was filled with a fierce determination. Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline as she glanced at the boy she had saved, still clutching her arm. "Are you okay?" she asked gently, brushing hair away from his forehead. The child nodded, but his eyes were wide. She recognized that look. It mirrored her own inner turmoil. Ginger squirmed in Sarah's arms, sensing her tension. "You're okay, girl," she whispered to the pup, hugging her tightly. The warmth of Ginger's small body comforted her. "Quick, this side needs more water." Someone shouted from the left, jolting her back to action. Without hesitating, Sarah set Ginger down. "Stay close," she commanded, and the little puppy barked in response, as if understanding the urgency of the moment. With a bucket in hand, Sarah rushed to the creek, her feet splashing through the shallow water. She could feel her heart racing, knowing every drop mattered. The line of buckets was moving faster now, as if the urgency was contagious. She splashed water onto the flames, the hiss a small victory against the chaos. Just as she turned to grab another bucket, she noticed Mike staring off into the smoke. "What is it?" she called, trying to see what had captured his attention. "They're coming back," he said, relief and tension mingling in his voice. "Mrs. Anderson and the others." Sarah's heart soared, but just as quickly, a new worry emerged. "How many?" "It looks like everyone," Mike replied, pointing toward the growing figures sprinting back toward the square, dragging fire extinguishers and more buckets. Their determination fueled Sarah even more. "Let's move," she yelled, and the crowd responded, cheers and shouts merging into a hopeful chorus. Together, they passed buckets, one after another, dousing the flames. The fire began to sputter, losing its ferocity under their united effort. But, as they fought against the flames' wrath, shadows danced at the edge of the square, flickering and ominous. The crowd began to quiet down as they noticed. Uncertainty settled in their hearts. "Is that?" Sarah squinted through the thick smoke, trying to identify what lay within the darkness. A small gasp rippled through the crowd. Then, the figure stepped forward, silhouetted against the fire. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered. As he moved closer, the whispers grew louder. It was Tom, the town's recluse. He hadn't been seen for years, not since the last tragedy had pushed him away from their community. "What is he doing?" someone murmured. Sarah felt the weight of her emotions pulling her in different directions. Had he come to help, or had the fire drawn him back against his will? Were they still fighting together, or was this the beginning of an even deeper fracture within their community? As Tom drew nearer, wrapped in shadows and uncertainty, Sarah's heart raced again, not just with fear from the flames, but from the surge of memories rushing back. This fire was just the start. What secrets did it unearth? And was their unity strong enough to withstand whatever storm was shifting at the edges of their lives? The crowd held its breath, waiting for whatever would come next. Tom stepped into the light, and Sarah's heart echoed with a mix of recognition and confusion. The last time she had seen him, things had been different. There was a flicker of sadness in his eyes, almost as if he had carried the weight of the past on his broad shoulders. "Tom," Mike called out, breaking the thick tension like a twig snapping underfoot. "We could use your help." But all eyes were glued to Tom, waiting for him to speak. He shifted his weight, drawing in a deep breath. "I heard the commotion. I couldn't just sit there," he finally said, his voice gravelly, yet trying to bridge the gap of missing years. "Then let's get to work," Sarah urged, shaking off her uncertainties. This wasn't the time for past grievances. The town needed them all. She grabbed a new bucket and offered it toward Tom, who hesitated for just a moment, eyes darting across the faces of the townsfolk. "Just like old times, right?" Sarah added, attempting to inject some lightness into the moment, but the heaviness still lingered. Tom took the bucket. Yeah, just like old times. They moved in tandem, now, passing buckets and splashing water. The flames began to lose ground, the fire stubbornly hissing in defiance, but weakening nonetheless. The camaraderie felt electric, even if Tom's presence was a reminder of wounds not yet healed. As they fought the fire, Sarah would occasionally glance at Tom, noticing the unsteady way he moved as if testing the limitations of his own strength. She could see the desperation mixed with a sense of belonging radiating from him. Perhaps, just maybe, he was ready to rejoin them. Suddenly, an explosion of sparks erupted from the flames, sending a wave of panic through the crowd. Everyone flinched, instinctively reaching for one another. Sarah's heart raced, tension coiling in her stomach. Everyone, stay down. Mike shouted, throwing up an arm to protect those around him. In an instant the fire rebroke to life, angry and chaotic. Smoke thickened, choking the air and obscuring their vision. Sarah's throat tightened as she struggled to breathe through the haze. She could barely see beyond the immediate danger. Hold on, Tom's voice cut through the inferno. We need to push back. Don't let fear take hold. His words were like a lifeline tossed into turbulent water. Sarah glanced at the boy she had saved earlier. He was still close, clutching Ginger tightly. Stay near me. She called, her voice firm amidst the chaos. As they regrouped, the sense of urgency spurred them into action. The buzz of adrenaline pulsed through Sarah's veins. They formed a tighter chain, chilling water sloshing from bucket to bucket, pushing back against the consuming flames. Together, they fought like a family tossed into the fray, each move weaving a tight bond that pushed their focus on survival. But just as victory felt within reach, a new sound cut through an ominous creaking. Sarah's heart dropped as she scanned the square, realizing the wooden beams supporting the nearby gazebo were under strain. Cracks snaked along the structure, and a low rumble filled the air. Run! Someone screamed, breaking the wall of resolve they'd built around them. What about the fire? Tom shouted, but it was too late. Sarah felt panic wash over her as she turned to look at the impending collapse. We can't leave. But even as she said it, a wave of heat surged, and she was caught between the flames and the collapsing structure. In that moment she could almost feel the ground shaking beneath her feet. The weight of every past hurt, an unspoken truth pushing down. Tom's eyes met hers, fierce now, igniting a flicker of hope amidst despair. We fight together. He yelled, but the question lingered: how could they fight against something so monumental? As the first beams began to splinter, Sarah took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next. She felt a bond with Tom, with everyone, as if the fire had forged something new, among them a resilience forged in flames. And in that defining moment, she knew that this wasn't just about survival. It was about facing not only the fire outside, but also the fires within. The square was their home. Could they save it? Or would they lose not just their history, but a chance at rebuilding their future together? As chaos reigned, Sarah made a choice that would change everything. What lay ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. They had to face it together, or risk losing it all. The ground shook as the first beam broke free, splintering into the air with a loud crack. Time seemed to stretch, every second filled with urgency. Everyone, move, now. Mikey belishful in deitans from Dieu. But Sarah couldn't move. She was rooted, locked in place by the dual fear of losing her home and the haunting memories that ebbed. Like a tide between her and Tom, she could see him pushing back against the flames, a warrior in the face of destruction. "We can save it," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "Tom," she cried, shaking off the uncertainty that enveloped her. "We need to go. We can't risk it." With a fierce determination, she stepped closer to the flames, propelled by a wild mix of emotions. For years, she had felt abandoned, thrown aside when Tom left. Yet here he was, standing tall, a part of her past rekindled amidst the flames, urging her forward. "Sarah!" he shouted the gagandy snapchimietra. She glanced back, seeing the boy still clutching Ginger, eyes wide with fear. A quick decision flickered in her mind, and she lunged back toward him. "Stay close. Don't look away," she urged, grabbing his hand and pulling him along with her. The fire roared behind them, and each step felt heavy, filled with the weight of their shared history. Just then, the first piece of the gazebo crashed into the ground with a thunderous thud, sending ash and debris into the air. Sarah felt the heat intensifying. The world around them blurred too quickly, and a sharp clang of metal caught her attention. It was only moments later that the full implications of their actions seeped in. If they fled now, would they ever return to this place? Would Tom vanish again? "Together!" Tom shouted, and that word wrapped around her like a promise. Her heart raced as she surged forward, their hands locked together as they ran through the thickening fog of smoke. They spotted an opening where the flames roared less fiercely, a narrow pathway that led to the edge of the square. This way. Mike Emotion leading the townsfolk started to funnel out, but not without hesitation. Some turned back, torn between the blaze and their memories. A figure stumbled near the edge, and Sarah's heart sank. It was Mrs. Henderson, her elderly neighbor, frozen in shock. Without thinking, Sarah darted toward her, releasing the boy's hand for just a moment. "Help her," she called to Tom. "Go," he urged back, already sprinting toward the woman. Sarah's heart swelled as she saw Tom now, truly embodying who he used to be, brave, selfless, the boy she once knew. As he reached Mrs. Henderson, he wrapped an arm around her waist and hoisted her off the ground. The sight ignited a flame of admiration in Sarah's chest. They weren't just battling a fire. They were standing together for each other, every past wound stitched with purpose. The path was still clear, and as the three of them pushed forward, fiery sparks raining down like angry fireflies, a voice broke through the din. "Don't stop. Keep going." They were almost there. Freedom awaited just beyond the flames, yet doubts whispered every step of the way. Would they truly escape the past? Would stepping into the light mean surrendering the shadows they carried? The heat intensified, and the path narrowed, forcing them to move faster. Just as they broke through the smoke, the square behind them erupted in chaos, but out in the open air, a new weight lifted. They had escaped, together, but as Sarah looked over at Tom, she could see familiar shadows still cradled in his eyes. "Are we safe?" the boy asked, panting as he clutched Ginger. For the first time, Tom paused, and his gaze met Sarah's. This was just the beginning. He murmured, and she felt the truth of his words weigh heavy in the air. They had survived the flames, but what lay ahead was an entirely different battle, a fight for healing, for reconnection, and for the chance to rebuild what had burned away. "What will we do next?" Sarah whispered, uncertainty creeping in as the chaos began to settle. "We heal, together," Tom replied, and in that moment, She realized healing meant confronting everything that had been left unsaid, but would the past allow them to truly start anew? The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm glow over what remained of the town square. There was a tense stillness, broken only by the distant crackle of remnants still smoldering. Sarah, Tom, and the boy huddled together, eyes scanning the desolation. Tentative hope mingled with the weight of their recent escape, their breath visible against the chill of the evening. As they stepped away from the chaos, Sarah felt the boy's hand tighten around hers. Are they going to fix it? He whispered, glancing back at the charred structures. His small voice trembled, raw with confusion. Holding tight to Ginger, he looked to Sarah with wide, pleading eyes. We'll rebuild, I promise, she said softly, though doubt gnawed at her heart. The past echoed around them, taunting her with memories of laughter and warmth beneath the gazebo memories that now felt impossibly distant. Tom knelt beside the boy, gently smoothing down his hair. We all have something to go back to, he reassured him, glancing at Sarah. It won't be the same, but it can be better. We just need to stick together. Sarah admired Tom in that moment. He was not just the boy who left. He was a man willing to fight. But the undercurrents of anxiety tugged at her. How? What if we can't? She said, the doubt spilling out. What if the losses are too great? Let's not think about what we've lost right now, Tom suggested. Let's focus on what we can create. He stood, lifting the boy to his feet before placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Everything starts with us, with our will to try. Together, they began to walk, moving away from the remnants of their past. Sarah let the warmth of Tom's presence guide her, but questions swirled like the ash caught in the evening breeze. Could they truly move forward? Flashes of anger and abandonment tried to surface, but she pushed them down. There was something more important here, a chance to heal, a chance to rediscover who they all were. Do you guys remember the picnic we used to have here? The boy's voice broke through her thoughts. With the sandwiches and the lemonade. Sarah smiled faintly, memories of lazy afternoons drifting into view. Yeah, and we all fought over the last cookie, she added, trying to recapture some of that warmth. The boy giggled, and for a moment, the heaviness lifted. Let's do that again, he urged, his enthusiasm contagious. We could make it bigger. Invite everyone. That's a great idea, Tom said, his face lighting up. It'll be our first official community gathering post-rebuilding. A way to mend hearts, not just structures. I like that, Sarah whispered, warmth spreading through her chest. A new tradition. Yet, as they began to brainstorm ideas, a looming shadow settled over Sarah's thoughts. They were talking about rebuilding, but was she ready to confront the ghosts of their past? The measure of her feelings for Tom still sat heavily in her heart, a constant reminder of their unfinished story. Tom's voice pulled her back to the present. You know, we could even have a little contest to see who can make the best lemonade, he suggested playfully, grinning at the boy. For a moment, laughter swept over them, light and freeing. But then an uncomfortable silence cloaked the air as the reality of their situation settled back in. What if their past trauma overshadowed their attempts at happiness? Together, Sarah mumbled, trying to grasp the depth of what that meant. Would rebuilding this community mean building a new life together with Tom, or facing the pain they had both tried to bury? As they reached the outskirts of the square, Sarah turned to Tom. You really think we can do this? Together? Her voice trembled with the weight of her own hesitations. He looked at her, sincerity etched in his features. We'll find our way. We owe it to ourselves to try. But as Tom said those words, there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes that gave her pause. Perhaps this was the real beginning, the first step toward healing, not just the town, but the intricate tapestry of their own hearts. But would they be brave enough to face what lay ahead? In that moment, the sky began to darken, a reminder that shadows lingered, even in the most hopeful of moments. And as they walked on, Sarah felt the distance between what they wanted to achieve and the weight of where they had come from stretch before them. Together, she echoed softly, a question laced in the promise. Would it truly be enough for both of them? The sun peeked through the rolling clouds, casting a golden hue over the town square as the townspeople gathered in front of the remnants of the gazebo. The air was thick with anticipation and a hint of uncertainty. Everyone held breaths of hope for what was to come. Sarah stood with Tom and the little boy, Ginger wagging her tail at their feet, sensing the promise of renewal. The remains of the fire had turned to ash, but new life was about to rise from those ashes. Together, they had faced the storm, both outside and within, but it wasn't over yet. They had to be brave one more time. Today's a fresh start, Sarah called, her voice steady and warm, reaching the crowd that had formed. Faces familiar and not, all colored with shades of worry and excitement, echoed her sentiment. We're more than just a town, we're family. The crowd murmured in agreement, smiles breaking through the cloud of gloom. Though many still looked weary, they wore glimmers of hope, fueled by shared purpose. Each pair of eyes reflected Ginger's joyful energy, reminding them that joy could exist even in chaos. Tom stood next to her, radiating determination. Let's focus on rebuilding, not just our town but our community ties too, he added. His sincerity broke through lingering barriers. Bonds formed from shared struggles were stronger than any past hurt. The little boy piped up, eyes sparkling, and we can recreate our picnic, just like old times. It'll be our way to celebrate and heal. His youthful enthusiasm rippled through the crowd, igniting warmth in their hearts. Exactly, Sarah beamed. We'll gather right here, share stories, laughter, and hope. This can be a place of new beginnings. Each suggestion flowed effortlessly, bouncing from one neighbor to the next, filling the space with light and optimism. As plans started to form, Sarah felt the space between herself and Tom narrowing, like their paths had finally come together again. About that, we're going to need volunteers, she said, looking deeply into his eyes, her heart racing. His gaze matched hers, recognition and understanding mingling in the air around them. Count me in, he said, his voice steady and heartfelt. The way he proclaimed it gave Sarah courage. They could face any storm together. With energy buzzing, they all dove into the organization of activities. There was chatter about scavenger hunts, sharing favorite desserts, and even a karaoke corner. Each idea reinforced their budding hope, knitting them closer into a family forged by resilience and love. As they worked together, laughter filled the air, slicing through the remnants of sorrow. Amid this, Sarah glanced at Tom. No longer did the shadows of their past haunt him like before. They both bore scars, but they were healing together. Hours passed, and with each moment, the sun dipped lower, casting a warm orange glow over the preparations. The future felt tangible, right there in front of them, teeming with life. Sarah turned to the little boy and ruffled his hair. "You ready for this picnic?" she asked. He nodded enthusiastically, eyes gleaming. "It's going to be the best." "Exactly, and I want you to lead the first toast," she said. He jumped up and down, squealing with delight, bringing smiles to everyone nearby. As dusk began to settle, the air sparkled with laughter. Ginger, nudging her way through the crowd, welcoming every outstretched hand. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, taking a deep breath of the fresh night air, inhaling all that had changed. They had weathered the storm. They were stronger, more connected. "Everyone," she called, laughter still buoying around her. "Let's take one big group picture to remember this moment." The idea thrilled the townsfolk, and they quickly gathered, a kaleidoscope of smiles, hope, and renewal. Sarah held her camera high, and as the click sounded, a sense of togetherness washed over them. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they stood together, a community reborn. Their laughter resonated into the evening, promising that this was not just a moment but the beginning of many moments yet to come. With the stars twinkling above, Sarah turned to Tom again, silently communicating all the unspoken words swirling in the air. "Together," she affirmed, her voice barely a whisper but full of conviction. "Together," he echoed, his heart wide open to new beginnings. And just like that, they stepped into the warmth of a shared future, hand in paw holding onto the old but forging ahead into the new. The past could remain behind them, but love, laughter, and unity would pave the next chapter of their lives, forever marking their lives in the heart of the little town. Now, let's make this a movement. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show us you care. Comment below with your feelings about this heartwarming ending. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation, and don't wait, not even one more second. The time is now to spread the joy.